Hey guys, welcome to another session of RBTL, or Reading Between the Lines. In this version, we're going to be talking about the dev notes that came out for the Balance Adjustment Preview. This is the January and 21st edition, so January 21st, so this is when I believe they're going to release. These are the heroes that they're going to be talking about, or we're going to be talking about. Briar Witch Iseria, Specimen Sez, Kawarik, Haste, Yuna, Spirit Ieria, Silk, which is quite surprising to be honest, Kawasu, and then Captain Rikoris. Artifact upgrade is Flower Shower, which is the free artifact that comes with Spirit Ieria, so it's more, I would say, for like newer players. It's a pretty good, big buff, so we'll talk about that. So here are my thoughts. So Briar Witch Iseria and Specimen Sez 2 ML buffs this time. I'll have to say that like this batch is not as like big as the previous batch. The previous batch we had like Sage Baal, LQC, Landy, and Cerise. All of them hugely influential, and all 4 of those are like, you know, some of the top picks in RTA scenarios and in Guild War offense, like every type of PvP. I don't think the changes here on these 2 MLs are as significant, nor the 5-star RGB, sadly, but that doesn't mean it's a bad patch. I don't expect every patch to be overpowered, so if there is any argument like, you know, it's not as good as the previous one, I think this should be normal. I honestly think we got a bit spoiled in the previous one. It was really crazy. Two limited and then 2 ML5s became really crazy. So first things first is Briar Witch Iseria. So the additional for Witch's Curse after is upon receiving lethal damage, grants immortality to caster for 1 turn. Immortality granted can only be activated once every 5 turns. So basically how Kayron has like basically an automatic immortality, which I think in her case then some people used to build it like pseudo DPS. If you're using her in RTA, she'll probably be one of the best strips that you've got. Although I still think a full team Despeller and debuffer at the same time, in most scenarios, a mage is better suited, just because of the mage artifacts that could come with it. I think that Briar Witch Iseria, looking at with the full buffs, the new buffs, I think the debuff type of Briar Witch instead of the DPS type is probably going to be more usable, although Guiding Light kind of may shift that. Having immortality is nice, and you get the death break on the S1. If you hit your enemies, you get extra damage, like splash damage and stuff like that. So I mean, overall is okay. Cursed Thorn Awakened after has 100% chance, so that's the biggest change there. 100% chance to actually decrease the attack and then make them unbuffable. So before, I mean, you always had the RNG of your resist check. You have an 85% chance before, because it's AoE, and then the 2 debuffs are pretty crippling. They decided to go for 100% chance. Something like Broman's Silence and 8 Taiwan Stun, something like that will probably never see 100% chance. And then once we get to that kind of place, that's a power creep to the max. This is just attack down and unbuffable, so it's easily cleansed, and because she isn't a mage, I think, you know, the lack of Abyssal Crown and stuff like that allowed Smilegate to have this kind of flexibility to say that, okay, what was her issue before? Was the proc rate or whatever? In my opinion, overall, I think she's going to be a better version of what she is, which is kind of obvious, but I don't think she's going to be meta still. Like I said, the Guiding Light's going to be helpful, so that in the way she works now with the immortality, if you have speed immunity gear on, you're pretty safe. So even if they knock you out and they can't strip you, they knock you out of your stealth, somehow they AoE you don't really have to speed contend for her. That's the kind of like the extra benefit, I think, for the way that she's looking right now. Specimen Sez, I think this is the talk of the town. My video is coming a bit later throughout the day. I was busy today, but a lot of people have been talking about it like this is the big one. This is the highlight. I have to say I agree in terms of ML5s. He's definitely a lot more usable. I think that with his buffs overall, like Guild War or Arena defense shenanigans can take it to another level. Since he's sort of like self-sufficient in terms of like CR manipulation, RTA, I can see him used a bit more. The people could play around with like counter Specimen Sez, I think, like bruiser type, kind of like how people do with RB. I think they can definitely pull it off with Specimen Sez here. He has higher HP pool than RB does, so yeah. So the first things first is Dreamy Iron Mace. So I don't own Specimen Sez, but I've always kind of wanted him, especially since the last buff. I can't believe that he got another buff. Upon successfully stunning the enemy, increases combat radius by 25%. So that's for Dreamy Iron Mace. And the Evil Claws after the Awakening version attacks all enemies with Evil Claws, a 60% chance to stun for 1 turn before increasing combat radius by 50%. So original is 45, so you got a bit of that. The increased damage dealt, that will be pending in terms of like how much more damage. I'm guessing about like 10 to 15% more damage increase. Anything more than that could be pretty crazy. Since it's AoE and it can stun too. But I don't know what it will be, but I'm assuming about 10%, maybe 15%. And then Lightstorm after, so attacks with the Lightstorm, inflicting extinction, resets cooldown for the skill when the enemy is defeated. Penetration, that was from this is like pretty much all from the previous, at least the 30 defense, 30% pen without the stun from the previous batch or the previous buff. If this skill is available when an ally except for the caster's attack has a 20% chance to counterattack. So basically it looks like an Elbrus Ritual Sword type deal. So if you could somehow set up, I'm just thinking like, you know, arena defense or whatever, or guild lord defense. If you can somehow set up that you know, he can't be killed right away, and other heroes are like higher priority to kill off than he is, then he has like some kind of Elbrus chance, right? If he can get them, if he can stun them with the S1, he boosts his combat range by 25%. In my recollection, but if you guys know this for sure, because I don't own Spez and nor do I really fight a lot of AI based Spez. Either I am stunned or I kill him off before he gets a turn. I think he doesn't do his S3 until someone is stunned. I might be wrong though. I think he goes S2 first and then he does S3 if someone is stunned. And he goes for the stun target AI wise, he goes for the stun target, not the elemental bait. So you can't necessarily bait him with a dark. If someone else is stunned, he'll go for that first in terms of the S3. If it's a dark and like, let's say a fire hero, they're both stunned, then he goes for the dark. I think that was the AI order. But yes, leave it down in the comments below if you guys know that answer. Like if no one is stunned, does he go straight to the S3? Because what I'm thinking is just like, you know, a lot of CR manipulation, he gets a turn and he might be able to get it like in terms of an AI fight. In that case, I think that depends how he'll be built, but with his like new skill set, I think RNL could be very, very powerful still. Alexa's Basket should not be out of the question. Some people are saying Wind Rider might be cool too, because I mean, if he's not attackable, the only thing about Wind Rider is that you have to actually kill someone before it actually procs, so that part's a bit tough. You have to kind of big brain your way around it. But if this is the case that he's in stealth or whatever, that's pretty cool, because then he can activate this Elbrus thing. So I definitely think that he has a lot more room to play with, and obviously Smelgit, when they designed this, they're thinking that this will work. I might not be thinking about all the variants of the variables around Spez when using him, but I think this is a pretty healthy buff. I think it's pretty healthy. We'll see how well it does. Kawarik, so before is a 100% chance to dispel 2 buffs and then increasing cooldown 1 turn twice. So you can do it 2 times. That means you can technically take off 2 turns. They're separate rolls, but if you soul burn it, it ignores resist. So this is a pretty good change, I guess. And then attacks all enemies with explosion and silencing for 1 turn before granting stealth to the caster for 2 turns, penetrate defense by 30%. So it's a bit better. I have still yet to kind of feel like I think that the only issue I have with Kawarik is that originally he felt like he was like the Bazaar counter, right? But there was still always that speed RNG, like could you beat that Bazaar? And the Holiday Euphine came out, which was like a way better Bazaar counter, like she's 100% Bazaar counter. And then Kawarik got a dev buff, and then no one really used them, or they tried. But his issue is that even though he is a speed scaling DPS, to get him to the speed where he needs to be very effective, I think was always the issue. I mean, he could hold his own toggles Ancient Book, so he can use the Dimensional Corridor easily. I don't know about this, like, I think the stealth part is probably the only thing that makes me think that we might see him used again. I don't know where I would use him, honestly, even with his buff. I own him, I molded him, and originally I tried to use him that way. I mean, I've reset like made clothes or whatever back in like season 1 RTA meta. I mean, he can work. The problem is that he doesn't do much after. Here, even with the stealth, even though if he is in stealth, I don't know if that would really change his weaknesses. I don't know if that was his weakness really. Penetrate defense by 30%. The other issue is, like, you know, to get the basically he needs a lot of gear. He needs a lot of really good gear. The speed, even in the I-90 meta, the speed he needs to achieve with the attack, crit rate, crit damage to be able to pull this off is I think where he's gonna struggle. Yeah, that's pretty much it. His buffs are pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, we'll go on, and then Haste. So basically, I would say this. So the two MLs, I would say, so far looking a lot better already. Kawarik, I'm skeptical of. Like, there's nothing in here other than the stealth that makes me think that he's gonna be really good again. Haste is the other thing. Without the bias of the community, I saw this as well, but people are saying that, you know, he's gonna be another golem hero. Now, I'm gonna give a shout out to one of my patrons. He said something about maybe Smilegate is working on a golem like equipment set update. And when he said that, I honestly think that this could be very, very possible. The only very reason is that like Carmine Rose, the specialty change, and then this haste buff, it's like, it seems like they're pushing golem. Now, it's not to say that just because you're a fire hero and you have some kind of like special elemental advantage perk means that it has to be golem, but it's like Haste was already really good versus golem, and then now he seems to be even better. So the patron's name is Stone Thunder. Did I say it? Stone Thunder. And then I had to give him that credit, because like when he said that, I'm like, hey, that's actually quite true. I mean, Smilegate knows that golem is not hunted a lot, so there could be, right? This is just like pure speculation. I'm not gonna spend even more than 5 minutes on this, but it could be that the defense set, HP set, and the attack set all get some kind of buff in terms of their innate effect. In terms of like the I-90 meta, the defense set, health sets, and the attack sets just don't usually cut it in terms of like the stats given for, you know, using the set versus something like an immunity set, a speed set, or, you know, stuff like that. Of course, people still have them, but people usually use it because they had it in the first place or got it from a world boss. So maybe I'm spoiling something that Smilegate doesn't want us to spoil yet, but I think it's a high potential based on everything that's happening. Anyways, Envoy Scythe after, and then Blood Run after. Let's take a look at Envoy Scythe. So attacks with the enormous Scythe with a 70% chance max to inflict bleeding for 2 turns. Steals 1 buff if the target is Earth Elemental hero. So like I said, I mean, like, let's take our head out of the ground. Let's not just think it's golem. I think that's cool. Again, like, does it add to his survival? Most thieves now, at least, usable in like kind of arena scenarios, have to be some way to get their attack off before an enemy can kill them, or they have some kind of self-sustain. So stealth, evasion, all that kind of stuff. He doesn't have that yet, and I think that's why people are defaulting him to kind of like a golem role. Blood Rend after, so attacks the enemy with a scythe and recovers health of all allies. Actually, wait, look at the awakening. Making it unhealable, and Hold on, I'm just looking at my screen and what's actually shown on the screen. Okay. Making it unhealable, inflicting Vampiric Touch for 2 turns, and then recovers health of the allies, and then amount recovered increases proportion to the damage dealt, and then the conditional increased amount is now applied by default. So before it increases the amount proportion to damage dealt, increased by 50% when the enemy is bleeding. You just get that straight up. Again, I mean, the healing may be good for like your team and even maybe himself, but squishier stats and just a thief without any other sort of way to survive, it's gonna make him harder to use in PvP. Also, bleeds are generally worse than burns, so like they keep investing into his bleed skills, just not as good for PvP, I think. Attacks all enemies with Envoy Scythe, Vampiric Seal, up to 100% chance to inflict 3 bleeding effects for 2 turns. When there are 3 or fewer enemies, damage dealt is increased, and then detonates any bleeding effects on Earth Elemental target at the end of the turn. And like I said, if it's not just Golem, it can work. It's just like in what scenario would you use him, and is it enough power? We'll have to see. I don't think that although he seems like he got a lot of buffs, a lot of changes, it doesn't mean that he's going to be much more usable. Whereas I think Kawarik is still probably in a better place in terms of PvP. He does more setup, I think, for the rest of the team, since he can strip and stuff like that too. And Yuna, actually, I found that Yuna's buff here is actually pretty cool. I personally think that if I had the gear for it, and mine's already kind of semi-molded, since her EE, I might look into building her again. So upgrade, so the after version, the Awakening, buffs all allies with the drone, increases attack and speed for 2 turns, acquires 3 focus instead of 2, which means that you are lowering 1 full turn in order for you to get the S3. So 5 focus, 1 focus for each S1, and the upgrade, which is her S2, used to require 2. So you need this and then 3 S1s to do it, and then for this you get 3 focus, so you need only 2 S1s. So either you dual attack to get your S1, but you don't need to. This lowers you fully by 1 turn, so 33% more efficient on your Yuna. And then Meteor Cannon consumes all focus, and then this was the last buff. It's always a critical hit. The last buff was always the critical hit. Attacks all enemies with the cannon. 6 failed attack always result in the critical hit. Successful meaning if it doesn't miss. When there are 3 or fewer enemies, damage dealt increases fewer enemies, and then grants an extra turn to the caster. So this one's pretty good. A turn cycling with a speed buff with the right gear, and that scary EE. I know that people still ran Yuna on defense for a while, like maybe a season ago in, like, let's say Guild War at least, because 3-man compression, it made it trickier to fight some Yuna teams. Now with like the hero roster that we have, I can foresee her making it back into a defense team again. Again, the speed buff being a very speed and attack buff being a very big thing that she always had. But then now her turn cycling is even better. Granting an extra turn, gets started quickly on another upgrade, or her S1, which also increases her own CR, and it's AoE, and it does heavy damage. So it's like she's looking pretty good. So I definitely think that if you have the gear and if you already had her molded anyways, experiment with her. I might do that myself. And the 4-star free Spirit Ieria, not a big thing here, but instead of decreasing the cooldown by 1 turn, you reset the skill cooldown. So basically, it's a good buff, especially for newer players who may not have Lina yet. And Lina still has a problem if you're farming, because if you're going into grass or earth elemental, she has a chance to miss. For free Spirit Ieria, she's a ML, so she'll never miss. So for farming, this may be the best free hero that we've got so far. Outside of that, I don't think she really doesn't have a place in PvP. I mean, if you look at her skill set, I mean, it's pretty good too. I think she has attack down and defense break too. So I mean, it's okay, but it's like you have better ones that could do better for those roles than her. So then she becomes a better PvP, or better PvE farmer, right? So and also she gets free Mola, right? You can fully skill enhance her once you unlock her, which is great. I'll talk about the artifact first, actually. So it used to, like, if you had to max it, 100% chance to grant increased attack to the caster for 2 turns when the enemy is defeated. So again, really good for farming, especially once you ramp up from wave 1 in your, let's say, catalyst farming or whatever, and you get to the boss, you have an increased attack for 2 turns. So by the time you hit that boss, you will get yourself attack buffed. But now it also increases the effectiveness to 14%. This means that if you enhance the artifact to plus 30, which I don't think anyone in their right mind would, unless you're using this outside of herself. When the enemy is defeated, increase attack for characters for 2 turns. So the attack buff is now permanent, which is, again, for the sake of free Spirit Ieria, this artifact is actually a really good buff. It's just I think people wanted to see, you know, maybe 5-star artifacts buffed or something like that. So in terms of artifact buffs, that's it, and I mean, it's okay. It's okay. I just don't think that people would actually max it. So it's Smilegate's definitely onto point. They don't want you to waste resources that you could put into PvP. PvP artifacts, which will incentivize the player to play more PvP, which will help them, you know, sell heroes, sell, you know, leave pack to get gear and stuff like that. So they're kind of giving us, like, the easy way to get into the game, which is the smart move, for sure. We'll continue on here. So yeah, so Silk gains 1 focus at the start of the turn for concentration, consumes 1 focus when attacked, and then increased combat range by 15%. So this is the big change here. When she is attacked, she gets increased combat range by 15%. She's naturally pretty fast, and she is there to control the opponents, to slow them down and to push them back, all that kind of stuff. I don't know if this is going to be PvP usable. I think that she's going to be more PvE again, and in terms of, like, Silk like this, like, is it more Golem again? Like, I know Golem, like, you know, fire is the way to go, and honestly there's just a plethora of really good fire heroes that can take out Golem, even without the ones that they've already buffed or introduced. But for PvE, I think this is going to be a bit better, again, for farming, since you can get Silk for free in the connections, I think that's what it's called. And then Storm Arrow is increased damage dealt. So that's pretty much it. So that's the S3, I believe. This is S3, yeah. Single shot is the S1. So, I mean, it's okay. Kawasu, I swear I thought Kawasu already had the buffs that he has in this patch, but I think I might have mixed it up with Cirilla. But instead of 50% chance to burn, you have a 50% chance to defense break for 2 turns. So that's pretty good. This is a huge buff compared. Soul burn 20 is 100% chance to decrease the defense, which is really good, but it's 20. Just keep that in mind. There's still a resist check to go through. After attacking, it has a 35% chance to activate Burning Vitality, and then Burning Vitality now increases combat readiness for 20%. So increase combat readiness of the caster by 20%. Now, so 35% chance to activate it. So that's pretty good. Again, maybe more Golem. When the caster is debuffed after being attacked, dispels all debuffs, increases attack per caster for 2 turns, only can be activated once every 3 turns, max 2 turns. It sounds like, so the max 2 turns is the Mola part. Yeah, so it really looks like Golem is really being pushed. So, you know, that's why I had to give my shout out to my Patreon for saying something like that. Now this might be in everyone's minds. Maybe it was already in everyone's minds. It is the first time I heard it. That Golem might be buffed. Who knows? It was before activates Burning Vitality, and it also, the Burning Vitality used to be increases attack of the caster for 2 turns. So is he gonna be staple in PvP? I don't think so. And then Captain Rikoris. So this one also for 3-star and a specialty change. It's definitely been brought up. I think Captain Rikoris has always been pretty good. He had a lot of RNG, and then therefore not very stable. I personally not 100% sure about the restrict. Like, whatever. It's like basically it's just an additional add to what he already had, which I think is a pretty strong one. So Cerise is not the only one now exclusively with this restrict debuff. With Archdemon Mercedes or Archdemon's Shadow, I hate that name. Archdemon's Shadow preview released about the seal. I don't think we're gonna be seeing that debuff for quite a while. But definitely when Smilegate is introducing new mechanics, we'll slowly be able to see heroes have similar mechanics, similar debuffs. They're like added an extra card into the deck, so to speak. 75% chance to restrict for 2 turns is 75%. It's not super high. So if you already used Rikoris before, I think that you may want to play with him again. He can be built pretty bruisery, decent damage, high HP, high stats, and also his speed is actually pretty good too. And what he just does is pretty good, like turn cycling, reducing cooldown, and then buffing speed and stuff like that. I think he's a solid hero. The stun that he has is attacks all enemies with Spirit Art, 100% chance to dispel 1 buff from the target, a 75% chance to restrict for 2 turns, has a 75% chance to stun the enemy with the highest combat readiness for 1 turn, regardless of whether the attack hits. That's pretty good. So that's like we call it soft debuff. So it doesn't hit the target. So it doesn't matter if, let's say you take him somehow into a Remnant Violet fight, maybe an RTA, and he doesn't have his immunity turn, and he doesn't one-shot you for some reason, and he's the next turn, you can stun them on the miss, which is good. But that was already there, so the only addition is the restrict, and then the amount recovered increases proportion to the caster's max health. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I definitely think that this batch is not a huge one. A lot of more golem options, and the RGB5, I think the only one that I would even consider looking at would be Kawarik compared to Haste, that is, and Kawarik's still, to me, slightly on the weaker side. We'll really have to see. I think he needs like some updates in either his speed scaling or just his damage mod in general, in order for us to see him used a bit more. Specimen Sez, I think it definitely have to be comparable. It's definitely the biggest highlight here, and Briar Witch is also very good. And now with, yeah. So I'm gonna end this this edition of RBTL here. If you guys have Discord, check out the Discord server. Follow me on Twitter. Subscribe to YouTube if you haven't. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.